Ladies and gentlemen, who would you consider to be the greatest chess player of all time? And please don't say me, because that is the obvious answer. On a serious note, most people say Magnus Carlsen, Garry Kasparov, Bobby Fischer. Other people have other opinions, and they're very strong opinions, and they get very upset when you say, but those people are not in front of a camera talking to 4.16 million subscribers at this very moment. Garry Kasparov is very prominently a number one, number two greatest chess player of all time. But Garry Kasparov is now 60 years of age at the time of recording this video, and that's not ancient in day-to-day life, but it's pretty ancient for chess, and he's been retired for many years. Your brain gets slower, your body can't, keep up. But every year, we get Garry Kasparov back in action in St. Louis, Missouri. And he is playing in the Chess 960 or Fischer Random Champion Showdown against players like Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, Wesley So, you name it, they are there. In this video, I'm going to show you an incredible move, an incredible sequence that Kasparov implemented against Hikaru and a couple of other incredible games that he played. This is one of the GOATs, and we don't see him in competitive settings very often, which is why this video is very special, and I would like to show it to all of you. Here we go. That was the introduction. In this video, we're going to see a game against Hikaru, we're going to see a game against Wesley So, and we are going to see a game against Ray Robson, one of the best American chess players that competes. What do we start with? Let's start with the course of action throughout the day. Benji, we got a little baby dog here. You can't really see him, but now that I've addressed him, you have to come on. Good boy. There you go. Yes. Can you not be annoying this video? What do you think? Go sit over there. Go down. All right. Let me record, and then I'll take you out for a walk. This is what my life looks like. So, Chess 960. All you have to know: 960 possible starting positions. The king must be between the rooks. You castle to that side, you castle to that side if the squares are free, and the bishops need to be on opposite color. That's it. Wesley So begins the game with e4. Let's look at it from Gary's perspective. Pawn to e5, so far so good. Obviously developing is, and there he is. Benji, down. Listen, man, thank you. Very good. b3. So clearly Wesley wants to put the bishop here, and he would like to potentially castle on the queen side. We have d6, bishop b2. The players are developing their pieces, and Kasparov does something very principled, advances where he's taking as much space as possible, right? So f5, everything is defending over there, and he's going to open things up potentially, and there we go. Did you see that long castle? This rook is responsible for castling queenside. That rook would be responsible for castling the other way. So as long as this frees up, Wesley has committed his king. But Garry Kasparov was one of the most feared attacking players ever. Like, Kasparov was just an unbelievable chess player, and now he has a target, right? So the move g5 is just a pretty clear indication that Kasparov is just trying to take space where Wesley has not claimed it. It also means that Kasparov is not going to be castling this way. He will probably castle on this side and try to dominate on this side of the board. Wesley has already committed his king. g3. Now, light squared weaknesses, but you do open up your bishop. Garry immediately knights to d4. Now, you cannot take this with white because you would be losing a very key defender of the king. Black can even play things like queen h5 and then queen a5, which would be very vicious. Queen h5, of course, putting pressure over here. And Benji, any of you that have a dog know that they will just randomly lick themselves for 10 minutes. And you can't hear this because my thing has a noise filter. Behind me is just, and oh my God. It is not a good thing to listen to. All right, by the magic of video editing, the dog got tired of annoying me and decided to leave. But that process took a couple of minutes. Now he's laying on the couch outside. We will continue from not this position, but this position. Wesley So kicks out the knight. Kasparov goes back, develops his other knight, and now we have an exchange. And we have a very tense moment here as Garry is going to open up these pieces. Now, this move by Wesley So is trying to plan for the future. Wesley is saying, my bishop is bad, but in the future, I will reopen it, and then it's going to be very good. That's the plan, right? Well, now Kasparov is like, okay, we'll see about that. Knight c6, we have a trade, take, and bishop g4. Rook is under pressure. Rook d e1, Garry also castles queenside. Remember, that bishop, not particularly good. This bishop, at any moment, will come alive. And again, I have told you throughout this video, Kasparov, one of the best and most feared attacking players in his heyday. Doesn't matter if he's 60. Remember what I said. 60 is not ancient in day-to-day. It's sometimes ancient in chess, but he's Kasparov. Okay, most 60-year-olds would be happy to get to this position against Wesley So. Kasparov at all points is playing to win against Wesley So from this position. Pawn to h3 played, and pawn takes f4, queen d3, the bishop slides back. And now Wesley damages Gary's kingside. Not kingside. That's not a kingside. That the queenside. I meant to say king safety. The king's safety is a bit disturbed. And, you know, I would imagine Wesley's idea was this. But it's actually not that good because the king just goes here. And I'm not so sure taking this pawn is very good because you just get hit with this move. Now you gotta leave, and this looks much more dangerous for white than it does for black. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually white's king that's feeling very airy, while this bishop is still significantly better than that bishop. So Wesley instead plays knight to f3. Now Gary just makes sure to defend everything near his king. Now bishop e5 is a interesting move. If knight takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes e5, Gary is going to launch an attack on the d2 pawn. And Gary kind of applies this pressure. He hides his king in the corner, and he plays queen d7, targeting this and trying to infiltrate, right? That's the idea. He's still creating attacking possibilities against white's king. And finally, Wesley has gotten his bishop out. 22 moves into the game, 14 moves after the move pawn to c3 has been played, and bishop is free. But unfortunately, Wesley traded his bishop for his king. Queen to d3. Now this is targeted, bishop f5 is coming, queen is coming, and uh-oh. Uh-oh, rook f2, bishop f5. I'm not so sure you know, you could try to run. I'm not sure it's gonna make, oh, that would be really nice. I'm not sure it's gonna make it any better. I mean, I have queen b1, I can always take the bishop and then go there. So it's not looking good. So Wesley has to give away the rook. Gary roars in with his f-pawn, rook to d7. The king is always safe on b7, rook f7, rook e7, and he is going to get in with rook e2. Just a masterful display of technique. Wesley's still trying to create some problems. I mean, you know, it's never too late to hang mate in one. Queen a5, that would be right. So Gary, by a miracle, doesn't blunder that. Rook d2, nice move, and queen d4 gives a couple checks. Rook g7, rook g2 is coming. Wesley So resigns to Gary Kasparov. What a game! This game literally came down to one move, pawn to c3. And Gary was like, okay, I'm going to play this game, and you are not going to have a bishop. And of course, Wesley was fine. He was very much in the game. He was still applying some good pressure. And here, he just had to accept the fact that he was not going to rush with the move c4. He was just going to play a game down a bishop. And Gary just roared in. Queen to d3, bishop f5, vintage Kasparov, dunking the basketball on Wesley So. Incredible stuff here. Second round of the day, Gary's opponent was Hikaru, which is always a very fun matchup. Gary played c4, the English opening up the bishop. Potentially, he will also move his b-pawn to have laser beam going on over here. And that's exactly what we get. We actually get both players developing in a way where the knight is on its natural square. Actually, this is kind of a game where both knights will go to a very natural square. The queen is in the corner. Castling queenside would be here, and you would need to move these two. But both sides actually castle short. So the problem is going to be this piece. But it's actually a short-lived problem because you'll develop and go here. And I think both sides are going to have like mutually assured destruction on the king side. So Gary plays pawn to d4, and Hikaru plays pawn takes, and pawn to d5. Position is very balanced. You can take with white, but it's really difficult to create an attack. You don't have a Greek gift, because your queen doesn't get to h5. If you play knight g5, black just can obviously defend themselves, but I think bishop f4 just wins material. It's just a fork. So you can't do that. So Kasparov plays knight e3, and he's going to go here. And Hikaru is rock solid as well. There's a big trade in the center. Totally symmetrical pawn structure. Probably white is better because that's how it goes. Oh, and if you're wondering why Garry Kasparov has the Croatian flag, he actually, I think, lives in Croatia like half of the year. That's at least what the stories are. I have zero evidence of this. I have not been to Garry Kasparov's house. But Gary, if you watch this one day, please do invite me. I'm sure it will be very special for me, not for Gary. Bishop d2, right? Everything is looking nice. Bishop d7. Hikaru does the same thing. Both guys centralize the other bishops. I mean, you cannot get a more standard-looking position if you tried. Queen b1. All right. Pawn to h6. And now Gary plays b4. Always trying to pressure. That is exactly what he's trying to do here. b4, b5, a4, a5 potentially. Also queen b3, queen here. Maybe we're going to trade something and get a knight to e5. Maybe bishop c3, knight e5. If you could swap these two, it would be great. Unfortunately, it's just not possible. Queen b8. Gary mobilizes. Bishop f4. Hikaru right on time to create the counterplay. If you now play queen takes d5, I go take, take. I kick your queen out. Let's say you move, I don't know, threaten mate. I have f5. You go here, and black is just fast. This is falling. This is falling. And then after that, I can, you know, eat like a shish kebab over here. Little Adana kebab from your local Turkish restaurant. And that's always tasty. So we have queen b2 instead, trying to defend the bishop. And I guess it's self-explanatory. You don't really want to allow the active queen. Queen b2, Hikaru creating good counterplay. And a couple of moves later, we have knight takes, pawn takes, rook and rook d8. And Hikaru is down a pawn. He's down a pawn, but he's got eyes here, he's got eyes here, and in the future, he's going to have, you know, eyes there as well. And Kasparov is taking the fight to Hikaru. Like, make no mistake. Rook c2. Bishop e6, and Hikaru plays bishop d5. Now, this is still a very difficult, if not completely unwinnable position for white. The reason for that is that you just have a weak pawn. White's entire advantage is this central pawn, and pushing it forward is actually very difficult. How does white win this position? Let's just say very hypothetically. Trade a pair of rooks, and then if black is very careless, trade a pair of queens, and maybe try to infiltrate and win that pawn, even though, you know, it's actually impossible to defend this pawn now. Even in trying to win this position and playing badly for black, I accidentally played well. So it's a very tough position to win. And so Hikaru is just going to sit back. Look at his Aljochen's gun, the Alekhines triple stack on the d-pawn, and the bishop in the way. It's just a tough position. Queen b4, Gary trying. But Hikaru can also play this for a win if he gets the pawn back. Because now Hikaru has the better position and he's no longer down a pawn. See, Hikaru's position was good. He had a really, really good setup, and maybe Gary's pawns here could be potentially targeted, but Hikaru was a pawn down. Now Hikaru has all the benefits of his position, but he's equal material. He's no longer down a pawn. And we get to an endgame where that's a target and that's a weakness. Everything here can be exploited because black has a light squared bishop. So, you know, black is going to maybe bring the king. And Hikaru puts the rook on a4, making white play passively. Now Hikaru brings his king, and he is just taking over. Absolutely taking over. Plays pawn to g5 to restrict the movement over here. If this pawn gets to f4, black has a mere positionally winning advantage. Because white is severely restricted, the bishop is passive, the rook is playing defense, and black is just going to walk the king into the middle of the board, and white will run out of moves. Rook to d3. Hikaru now plays rook c4 and f5. Position looking really, really nice here. g3. Now, Hikaru probably should play f4 here. Pawn takes with the idea rook takes f4. G takes f... that would be a nice mouse slip. This looks good because it forces the king back, but actually, I think splitting the pawns, and then, you know, if you get to a situation that looks, let's say, like this, it's real bad for white. This is restricted. That can't move. That's all going to end up on a light square as well. It's a very, very tough position. But black also doesn't have to do that. Black can, of course, just bring the king. Black can also maybe bring the king over here. That's another idea. And in here. And then it's really, really tough. So Hikaru putting the pressure. Bishop to e2. Rook c2. f4. Take, take. And Hikaru plays bishop c4. But Garry Kasparov, all the way back here, calculated with like seconds on the clock. I mean, Kasparov had less than, let's say Kasparov had about a minute on the clock. Kasparov calculated a 20-move sequence to save this game against Hikaru Nakamura. How is that possible? With 1 minute on the clock. How is that possible? Gary realized that from this position, Hikaru can take the bishop and pin the rook to the king. Kasparov also realized Hikaru can pin the rook to the bishop, trade everything, and run his king to win this pawn. And there is a sequence of moves here that goes bishop c4, rook d2, take, 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 king d6, king d3, king c5, a4, king b4, king d4, king a4, king e5, king b5, king f5, a5, king g6, a4, f5, a3, f6, a2, f7, queen, queen. And Kasparov thought that's a draw. But there's a problem. After pawn to a4, it's not king b4. You played king c5 to force this move, and now you play king d5. This is called Zugzwang. White plays h4, black plays h5, and now white is in Zugzwang, which is a situation where you have no move that prevents your opponent from getting exactly what they want. It's a situation where you have moves and every single one of them is bad. And if you go this way, now I win the race and you do not get my pawn. And if you go this way, I go get that pawn and you are definitely not fast enough to run all the way back there. I will promote a queen and I will execute you. So then what did Kasparov calculate? All the way back here, Gary knew that he would play bishop here, get hit with all of this, and save the day. How on earth did Kasparov calculate that he would not lose this game? Like this. Gary calculated rook c2, a pawn trade, and now Gary calculated bishop c4, rook d2, take, 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 king d6, king d3, king c5, and now not a4, which loses to king d5 and Zugzwang when the black king gets in, but rather king c3, completely giving up this pawn. Can you imagine? The entire idea of the black attack doesn't work because this pawn is not worth saving. If you take this pawn, now that infiltration route is possible, whereas now it is not. Gary calculated this entire sequence that you are about to see. King c3, king b5, king d4, king a4, king e5, b5, king f5, king a3, and now you do not run to this pawn. If you run to this pawn, then after the race concludes, black promotes with check, with a check. So you have to go somewhere else. King e6 or king e5. Gary calculates that they both make a queen, and now Gary promotes with check. Queen b4, queen h6, and this game could continue, but the players agree to a draw. An incredible piece of calculation by Gary Kasparov. Sensational. Calculating from a very unpleasant and likely losing endgame in some intricate details. Probably Hikaru needed to be a little bit faster with his king or his pawns, but it was subtle. And Gary calculates a 20-move sequence with less than a minute on the clock. Right there. King c3, black has no choice. Black has to take. If black doesn't take, then you will just keep going and force them to take. Incredible. Absolutely incredible that Gary found that on instinct with that little time on the clock. And I got another game for you. I got another banging Gary game. So we got king in the center this time. We have between the rooks. The bishops are on their home squares. The knights have been relegated to the second league. They should win more matches next year. And if you want to castle this way, you would just move the bishop. And Ray Robson from the United States plays pawn. Well, every player has been from the United States. This is not special. Knight g3, pawn to d5, c3, c6, h4, h5. So you may ask yourself, why did Gary not take the pawn? Well, that loses. It's just a fork. The thing about Fischer Random Chess 960 is that there's all these goofy tactics, and you'll notice throughout these games, like, the guys like to open up their queens and bishops early, then they kind of try to think about where their knights are going to go and where their king is going to go a little bit later. They are not worried about playing obscurely on the edge of the board. So Gary plays h5 because knight takes h5 actually leads to the exact same tactic, except it's not a fork, it's just a trapped rook. Bishop g5 played by Ray, knight c7, and Gary immediately tries to get rid of this bishop. He does not like the pressure. He does like the pressure, but not against this position. And now he plays queen d6, because retreating here means getting your rook trapped, which is very embarrassing, and that is not something that Gary would blunder. Queen to d6, intending this, and fg or queen g6, but my money's on probably fg, trying to keep the queen on the board. Then black can play, for instance, h4 and bishop f5 with a massive advantage. It's just very powerful, the bishops here. Bishop f5 is played by white, trying to trade this, also to induce this move to try to take the knight. Gary now plays h4, trying to dislodge that away. Ray here probably should have immediately prevented, the h-file coming in. That's probably what Ray should have done. But if you move your rook, you can't castle anymore. Regular rules of chess do apply somehow. Instead, we have this, and Gary's understanding of chess is absurdly high. And in this game, this one move allows Gary to make about 5 moves in a row that are very easy, which improve his position and ask questions for his opponent. That is called an initiative. It's when you are, in any sport, or like, in any team sport, or in any individual sport like tennis, it's when you're on the attack. Your opponent is responding to you. They might not be losing, but they are responding, and they are playing your game. They are fighting your fight, okay? Kind of like Adesanya was fighting Strickland's fight last night, for my UFC fans, right? So, by the way, what an upset. I mean, good Lord. Knight e2, and now Gary takes. White now has to bring the queen. Now Gary plays e6. Now the queen's got to move, and now Gary plays e5. So a couple of moves in a row, very easily made. Ray Robson plays f4, trying to fight back. Gary captures, and now opts for a very, very high-level move. The best move in this position is very tough to understand as a beginner, maybe even as an intermediate player. I think many people here would try to play bishop e7. You can't castle, obviously. But you have to understand, it's a mix of what does white want and what does black want. White would like to continue attacking. Black wants to find a way to fight back on the color complex where they don't have a bishop, which is the light squares, and also what we're planning for in the future. I mean, how will we get this bishop out? We can't castle that way. So this very nice move, queen d7. This is white's best piece, by far. If white plays f5, that's actually no longer a threat because of a pin. So you could go here, which you couldn't do when your queen was there. If you went here, you would get pinned. Then you would need to go queen d7. So queen d7, and now, not rook takes, but king takes. The king is safe, and now the e-file is opening up. These pawns are a bit weak. This pawn can't move because of Gary's h-pawn move a while ago. And Gary was a master attacking player, but he's still a genius at all chess. Watch how easy he makes this look. f5. Drops back. Now the pawn is hanging. How are you going to defend it? Castling. Okay. Fantastic. Rook e8. I'm creating a threat. Gary's creating a threat. Gary is like a cowboy with a gun underneath the pillow. That's a threat. That's just an idea. It's always there now. Knight c1, knight c8. Both guys rerouting their pieces. The bishop has come to play. These pawns are a bit overextended. Attack on the h-file, attack on the e-file. Ray plays knight b3. Gary, great move. Restricting 2 knight jumps into c5. Now, f6. Why f6? Why did we play that move? Anticipating the arrival of the knight. Pawn to f6, forcing white to play a move. A very tough decision. Do you take and open up black's rook? Probably not. Do you play g6 and freeze the pawns permanently for the knight to feast? The knight will feast in the endgame. Or do you play a move like knight f3? That's what he chooses. Now Gary, bishop g3, screwing it into the square. Knight f2, and you will notice this is the only open file, and now white can't even fight for it. White can't even fight for the only open file. And what's gonna come after the bishop goes to g3? The knight is gonna come to d6. f5 is hanging. The question here is brewing. The knight is threatening to jump in at all angles. But who else is coming in? The rook! You don't always have to sacrifice it for me to yell it. The rook hits the knight. It's got absolutely nothing better than to go backwards. And now the rook goes forward once again. Knight g4, Ray is bouncing back and forth. Now the knight goes where the rook once was, and all we have left is this rook, which at some point is going to come alive on the e file, on the g file, or on the f file. All of these pieces running circles around the white position. Now a cool, calm, collected sliding up of the king to d6. Just improving the position, and here we go. Rook c2. Rook d3, there we go. Rook is coming to f8. Gary already up a pawn. It's never too late to win a second one. And Gary decides, you can play defense, but as you play defense, your rook stopped guarding your knight. There's my h-pawn. The h-pawn that started this entire thing. The h-pawn that a while ago I moved here to dislodge your knight, right? Wrong variation. I moved here to dislodge your knight. Same concept, wrong variation. We go all the way into the future of this game, and suddenly that pawn, that little pawn, is knocking on the door of the white position. This is falling. This is falling. Gary plays pawn h2 check, and now it's just a matter of getting a knight in, and it's going to be a checkmate. So he goes here. King takes c4. Everything is glued shut. Knight f2, and Ray Robson resigns. Crushing Wesley So with an opposite colored bishop attack. Crushing Ray Robson. 2,700 strength. Excellent game by Gary. The suffocation from a very, very late middle game to an end game, a backwards move, queen trade, and then all these pieces came alive. It was exactly what we would expect Magnus to do to people. And Kasparov doesn't get enough credit for being a genius at endgames too. And then, speaking of endgames, I mean, the 20 move sequence that he just envisioned with king to c3, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Gary slowed down a bit on the second day. He had some good positions, but he only managed to score half out of 3, unfortunately. But we'll see how he does on the final day of this event. Very, very exciting stuff. Always good to see the GOAT to many. And yeah, what more to say? Get out of here.